Hey everybody, how we doing today? Mark Lozano here, Christ Center Capital. Today we're going to talk about some of our ethical assets since inception of Christ Center Capital, which would be September of 2021. But before we do that, I want to talk about Second Vote. So Second Vote, hopefully I got the pointing right there. Second Vote is a great ally to Christ Center Capital. If you don't know about Second Vote, I mean, you need to make yourself aware of them, right? So Second Vote is a crazy, awesome site. It is a really, really cool ally that Christ Center Capital utilizes all the time. So Second Vote does exactly what Christ Center Capital does, but they're focused more on the spending dollar. Christ Center Capital, as you know, is focused on the investing dollar, what we can do with our money in a moral way. But Second Vote, you can search scores of companies that they do. They have a great algorithm that produces scores that are based on, I believe, five principles. The top one being life, abortion. Then it goes down to everything from religious liberty to the Second Amendment. So, and what Second Vote is, so not only do they focus on the investment dollar, they also are a bit more politically minded than they are religious minded, though a lot of that is overlap, of course, whereas Christ Center Capital is a bit more religious minded than it is political minded. But I mean, Second Vote and C3 does agree on almost everything. And they, like I said, they help us with research. They're one of the tools we use, and we highly encourage other people to go check them out. It is really, really cool what they do, and the wealth of information on their site is second to none, really, when it comes to this kind of investigative work that goes into major companies. All right, coming back. This week, we had kind of an interesting take on our curation report. So people know that Christ Center Capital, we let the market do the heavy lifting. What is the market recommending? Then we put those assets through a ethical screening process. Well, this week we found that some assets that were being pushed by the market seemed to be a little bit forced, right? Now, that happens a lot with major stock pickers and investment firms, influencers, because a lot of times people are those entities are needing to produce quality picks or at least some kind of picks to justify taking your money, putting it bluntly. Now, Christ Center Capital, all of our services are free, so we don't really have the need or desire to make that justification when we don't feel that an asset is actually worthwhile. Um, and that's what this happened. That's exactly what happened in this week's curation report. We saw a bunch of assets pop up, meet our consensus criteria, and we were like, we've either talked about them in depth, or some of them seem a little bit forced, or we just don't feel comfortable. None of them are actually gonna. We know just by the sniff test, none of them are gonna pass our ethical screening process. So we said, why don't we go back and look at all of our ethical assets to date and see which ones have performed the best and see if they're still good picks today, right? From a financial perspective. So that's what we're going to do today. If people are familiar with the C3 website, right here, you can go, if you go to our homepage and the featured content, the investment analysis, it's going to take you to this page. Anybody at all times can click on the C3 ethical assets. It's going to take you to a nice little Google sheet, or it's going to take you to a post that can take you to a Google sheet if you just click right here. And what that Google Sheet's going to show you is all of the gold or at least strong purple rated companies that C3 has picked since its inception in September, right? Now, obviously, the C3 was formulated during a very tumultuous time in the market, but this will show you all of our picks, how it's performed compared to the S&P. And as you can see right now, the S&P since the inception of C3 is down about 5%, where the average of C3's picks are down about 9%. Um, and that's pretty much to be expected because, as we've always said, as you start to screen out companies based on morality, you're limiting yourself and your returns are probably going to be hurt as well. So it's not easy financially being a Christian investor. We are very, very blunt and open about that. But we do think it's worthwhile and meaningful from an eternal perspective, right? From a spiritual perspective. Now, going back again, our latest post, we have this, you can see we got steel, solar, lithium braces. We'll get into more of that a little bit. So what we did is we looked at all of our picks since inception that have passed our moral screening test, and we actually felt comfortable with recommending to our investors or to the people reading our content as moral assets. We picked the top three that were actually had the best performance financially, and then we did a deep dive to see if they would be actually recommended today. Because even though some assets have performed well in the past, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to perform well in the future, and it doesn't mean that assets who have had backing by major investment firms and analysts in the past will have that backing in the present, right? So we go through this post, and the top three assets, I know it's a little hard to see on YouTube because of the gold here, but our top three gold rated assets since our inception has been Enphase Energy. They're up 136% since they first made it onto our radar on January 23rd of this year. The Smile Direct Club. This was actually a pretty recent pick, but they went up pretty drastically just in the time since they made it onto our curation report. So they are up almost 70% since June 13th. And then we have Solar Edge Technologies. Solar Edge Technologies is up about 27% since their inception, or since they made it onto our curation report in very early May. These three companies all did really well. They all passed our moral screening test, meaning no red flags came up. They were focused on their business. They do their business well, and they're not really participating in a lot of extracurricular activities that would be immoral to, in the eyes of C3 concerning with Christian ethics. And they also, what they're doing is supports the common good in some way, right? Or at least that's the argument that we made in our little deliberation before they make it into our report. So Enphase Energy and Solar Edge Technologies, both solar companies, they have good intentions. They're trying to produce green energy and all that good stuff. We don't here at C3 have a problem with green energy. We do think that nuclear energy and fossil fuels are much more efficient and all that kind of stuff. We talk about that very in-depthly in our posts. But Enphase Energy and Solar Edge Technologies, you can imagine why they've had such a uptick and why they've performed so well since they made it into our curation reports. That is because of the climate bill that is being signed this week and a bunch of other bills that have really incentivized that green energy. And the Smile Direct Club is just it's honestly just a braces company that had market dominance, and analysts were very happy about it, and they've keep recommending it as long-term hold asset, and it just continues to perform well. Out of all of these, they all still have somewhat strong buy ratings from major investment firms and analysts, or at least the ones that C3 follows. So all three of them, if you were to open up a position today, it probably wouldn't be frowned upon by the major investment firms. But you probably shouldn't expect the amount of return like an Enphase Energy, the 136% return. You probably aren't going to expect that in the near future because some of that market cap growth has been limited because these solar technology companies have expanded, and as the blob gets bigger, there's less room to grow, right? And then we have some honorable mentions down here. Now, if you're an avid follower of C3 content, we're not very keen on ETFs. But one of our best ETFs I've ever come across our curation reports that we actually felt somewhat comfortable giving a positive rating to, and that passed our little algorithmic process, scores and all that, was the LIT. It's ticker symbol LIT. It's lithium and battery ETF. It does have Tesla in there. The holding on Tesla is about 4% of its total holdings for the LIT. And like we've always said before, we just don't feel comfortable with ETFs because of the amount of research that it takes to make sure that those companies, those assets that are coupled in the ETF are staying in good graces, and not doing anything nefarious. It's just a very, very tall task, right? So they didn't make it into our top three, but they are on that ethical asset list, begrudgingly so by us, but they make it there, and Yeah, so we always just caution people, take take that caution with ETFs. Going down the list, we have Nutrien, which is a crop nutrient company that still gets favorable buy ratings. They're up about 26% since we first got wind of them on our curation report in January. And then we have two assets all the way back from our November report, and they're both steel companies. So both of these have done fairly well. They're Steel Dynamics and Nucor Corporation. Both of them did well because the Biden administration did sign another bill that really incentivized American steel and that kind of thing. Well, go back a little bit. I know there could be a bunch of people out there that are very politically minded that would give a lot of pushback to that statement. I understand completely as to why, but I'm not going to go into the weeds. Anyway, Steel Dynamics and Nucor Corporation both did fairly well. They had the same amount of growth percentage wise, give or take a half a percentage point. But Steel Dynamics is the only one that's actually still being recommended by the market. Nucor, not so much. They've kind of capped what the market thinks that they could have grown. But Steel Dynamics, they have, where is it? It's somewhere in this post. Yes, their new furnaces, their new electrical arc furnaces are killing the competition right now. And that's one reason why Steel Dynamics is still getting a really favorable buy rating by the market. But that's what we got. A couple steel companies. We got a crop company. We got a lot of things connected to the solar energy sector, including that the lithium and battery ETF, and then we got some braces in there, right? But those are the strongest performers from the C3 ethical assets since our inception. Please go check it out on the site. You can explore. There's a bunch of other assets on there that still have performed decent. There's other assets that they haven't really hit the boom yet. They're down, but as we always say, we're looking at mostly long-term holds here. Um, and as always, we encourage you to do your own research, do your own due diligence. We're not really investment recommenders here at C3. We're just taking what the market gives us and applying that moral analysis to it. If you feel called, please, we would love your support, both in prayer and financially, because we're trying to expand. We're trying to do. Right now, we're just doing one post a week, right? We're doing this one post a week, and it is tough not to put more time to it, but we're working on a volunteer basis here, so we can't really do much more until we increase our capital. But we're still going to continue this on. This is kind of the bare minimum that we can do right now. So we're going to continue on making these weekly posts, trying to take what the market's giving you and giving us and giving you some good moral analysis to it. Again, go check out Second Vote if you haven't already. They got a wealth of knowledge there. And if you're interested in what C3 does, you will definitely be interested in what Second Vote does. But that's all the time I got today. If anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email us at support@christcentercapital.com. We are very, very interested in any feedback whatsoever. And if you have assets that you want us to review, that to put through our ethical screening process, we can't make any promises, but we will do our best to put it into one of our curation reports. All the best, and God bless.